Hi, welcome back to my channel, Beautiful Minutia. If you're new here, my name is Tiffany, and today I wanted to share my April TBR with you. My April TBR is actually really tiny, and I'm not mad about that because I have some projects that I wanted to work on and haven't had an opportunity to yet because my schedule's been just kind of full of buddy reads or whatever. So it's a smaller group of books that I actually am definitely reading this month. So this will be a shorter video. First of all, for my Patreon, I am going to be reading The Touchstone by Edith Wharton. I don't know a ton about this book in particular. I think it has to do with someone who's like blackmailing someone else though. So it sounds like it'll have that typical like moral exploration that Wharton likes to do, as well as some drama that probably heats up too. I've had a mixed experience with Wharton in the past in terms of books of hers that I've read. I loved Ethan Frome. I had mixed feelings about The Age of Innocence, and those are really the two from her I've read so far. So this is a novella, not quite as well known as some of her other books. So I'm really excited to dive into this because one thing that I've loved in both of the Whartons that I've read is that her writing is just absolutely fantastic. For my in-person book club, we will be reading As Long as the Lemon Trees Grow. So this is very much different than the kind of books that I normally read, which is funny because this was one of my picks for book club this year because we all get to submit a couple of books and then we kind of randomize which books we read which month. So As Long as Lemon Trees Grow is a contemporary YA, I'm pretty sure, about, I think, like Syrian refugees. Well, I think it actually might take place in Syria, so they might not actually be refugees, but I think it's going to be a heavier read than the books that we've read the past couple of months for book club, so it'll kind of shake things up a little bit. But it sounds like it'll be really good. My older sister actually loved this book. This was one of her favorite books that she read in the past couple of years. So the last time we went book shopping together at a used bookstore, she was looking for this book in particular and found it and then said, well, I'm not going to reread this anytime soon. So I'm going to leave it with you so that way you can read it because I think you'll love it. So with that high endorsement, I'm really looking forward to reading this one. Every month I have a classic that I read. And so the classic that I am reading for the month of April is Brave New World by Aldous Huxley. Really looking forward to reading this on the tail end of teaching Fahrenheit 451 because this is also a classic dystopian, often included in the list of classic dystopians. You know, it's usually 1984, Fahrenheit 451, and Brave New World. I know that this takes a very different direction than the other two. All of them have to do with different things like government control and certain things like that, like oversteps of the government in a futuristic society. And so I know like 1984 has a lot to do with like surveillance and brainwashing. Fahrenheit 451 has a lot to do with censorship and book burning. And this one I think has to do with government controlling people through pleasure and addiction, which is a very different direction than the other two. I'm really looking forward to picking this one up. I'm pretty sure I'm reading this with Charlene. I think we had talked about reading this one together in April potentially. So we'll see. I hope she's able to read it with me. But if not, this is my classic for the month. And this has been on my shelf for probably like 6-7 years, something like that. So I'm very excited to pick this one up. Stephanie and I will finally be finishing our read through of the Anne of Green Gables series, so we will be reading Rill of Ingleside in the month of April. I'd hoped to squeeze it in March, but I ended up reading so much middle grade other than that I was like, do you mind if we push it to April? So we pushed it to April instead. I'm looking forward to finally finishing this series. I did read it as a child, but I don't remember anything about this book because in my adult years, the only ones that I'd reread were the first 3. So I'm really looking forward to this. Rilla is Anne's youngest daughter, and I'm pretty sure this takes place when she's a teenager. And in the last few books we've read, she's very young. She's like a baby or, you know, not even like in school yet. So I'm looking forward to reading this book. I've heard from a lot of people that it's a tearjerker. I know it takes place during World War I. We'll see. I hope I love it and I'm not overwhelmed with the sadness because I've had a couple people tell me who have read it like, I'm glad I read it, but I'll never read it again because it was too sad. And then I've had a couple other people say this is their favorite of the Anne books. So we'll see where I land. I'm also going to be completing the Tawny Man trilogy in the month of April. Well, I say completing. This might go into May, but I will be reading the final book in the Tawny Man trilogy, which is Fool's Fate. So I'm looking forward to that because there was a lot of setup in book 2 for what we're going to end up doing here in book 3. So there's a lot of plot lines to resolve, a lot of conflict that didn't get a resolution in the second book. So there was a lot of building that was happening. So I'm really curious to see how things are going to pan out. This is not the end of the story, even though it's the end of this particular trilogy, because there's a quartet and then another trilogy that follows this book. So I know that this is not the last we will see of Fitz and the Fool. This is not the last we'll see of this particular area in this world. But I'm hoping that some of the plot lines that are really central in this particular trilogy will be resolved, because Hobb usually does that. She usually wraps it up in a satisfactory enough manner that there are larger mysteries and questions about the world that aren't answered, but major plot points are. So looking forward to that. And when I finish this one, that'll mean that there's like 2 series that I've finished like back to back with Anne of Green Gables and then Tawny Man. So that's cool, because one of my goals this year was to finish more series. The last book that I have on my TBR is actually a carryover from the month of March, and that is The Mill and the Floss by George Eliot. At the time of me filming this, you can see I'm not very far. I did not get as far into this book as I want, but I am filming this about a week before the month ends, so I'm hoping I can get closer to the halfway point by the end of the month. I love George Eliot. She's becoming one of my favorite authors. In fact, I think the past couple of years, the Eliots that I've read have made it into like my top 3 of the year. So I love George Eliot, really connect with her writing. I think it's really beautiful, but she also gets a little like philosophical sometimes, talking about human nature and stuff, and I love those too. So I feel like those moments are very contemplative, and so I love her just as an author. This is one of her earlier works. I think her debut was Adam Bede, which I read last year. So this particular book I think is not a favorite for many when it comes to Eliot, and I think I can kind of see why, because some of the characters make kind of infuriating choices. It's about a brother and a sister who are very kind of like mismatched when it comes to what's socially acceptable. So the son has great expectations placed on him by his mother and father. They want him to be a lawyer, they want him to be a man of business or something like that, to rise above their current station. Even though they're a wealthier family, they have been workmen. They have a mill that they work on. And so they want him to be someone intellectual, someone important. But their daughter, in a world where women don't have the ability to have intellectual pursuits, is as smart as a whip and it would fulfill all the things they want their son to fulfill, who is not very bookish and is much more outdoorsy. So it's really interesting to explore that. At the point of the story where I am, they're still children, but I know that this follows them into their adulthood, and I'm assuming that there's probably some heartbreak in store for some of these characters that we've been introduced to. Either way, I'm looking forward to see how this goes. I've really been enjoying Eliot's writing so far, which is no surprise. So I think that even if I don't love the story as much as I've loved some of her other stories, I think I'll still enjoy her writing. But so far, I am enjoying it. Well, those are the books that I'm definitely going to be reading in the month of April. It's not a ton, and one of them is a carryover. So I'm really excited because that leaves room open for me to either mood read or to pick up different things that I've wanted to pick up and haven't had the opportunity, time, or space to do so. At least some of April will be a less busy month for me. I think the first half of the month is pretty busy, but the second half of the month, not so much, which should give me an opportunity to read more. And I'm really excited about that because this school year has been so busy, and I'm really happy to have some free time in my future. I'd love to hear from you in the comments down below if you have read any of the books that I'm planning to read this month. Let me know your thoughts on them. But I'd also be curious to hear what your plans are for April. There are probably lots of really fun readathons and read-alongs happening during the month, because there always is on BookTube. And I try not to look too much at them, because then I will schedule myself to death and not have the opportunity to mood read, which I created space for this month. But I would love to hear if you're participating in any sort of event, and also what book you are the most excited to pick up in the month of April. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, please hit like and also subscribe so you can continue to see more bookish content from me, and I will see you again next time.